Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Dear Profiler Pat, where you send me your questions, ask for some advice, and I give some advice, and I always hope it helps. If you're new to the channel, please do like and subscribe, and also check the playlist for information in the areas you might be interested in. And also, yeah, if you want to send me a question, please send it to profilerpatbrown@gmail.com, and in the subject line, put Dear Profiler Pat. Now, I got this letter recently, and interesting, it wasn't actually addressed to Dear Profiler Pat, but I think I wanted to talk more on it. I have talked about this before in another way, but after I read this letter, I thought, okay, this is something I think is really needs to be said, and it often isn't said, especially by counselors for some reason, because I guess counselors, some therapists, not all of you guys, but it's one of these things where saying what I'm going to say kind of kills the money train, So, but I'm going to say this because I think more people need to hear this because I believe it's the truth. So I'm not going to read you this woman's story because it's very personal. I'm just going to say that she appeared to have a pretty horrible mother who she thought might be Munchausen syndrome by proxy. And she gave some concerning things about the woman. And she also thought there was sex abuse, not only to her, but perhaps to others. And the whole family was like a mess. And now the mother's dead. And her question is, what can I do about this? What can I do about what she's done? What can I do about what happened to me? And all the stuff in my head and all this kind of thing. So I wrote her back, and I want to read you what I wrote back because I think this will apply to a lot of people. I said, okay, all of this sounds horrible, which it did. And certainly it seems like if true to any extent. Now, when people write me, sometimes all of what they write isn't necessarily true. Sometimes it can be partially true. Sometimes it can be recovered memories, which I think is nonsense, but especially some certain therapists, again, and most therapists don't do this, but certain therapists will help you recover memories. And they're not real memories, they're your imagination going. And so especially if you had issues in the past, it's sort of easy to connect past terrible things that happened to you or to even more terrible things. And so you say, oh, and then this happened. But I can't judge whether a person's telling a real past thing that happened or they're imagining it or they don't even, whatever. I just don't know. And so, but whatever happened, so this person is affected. So if you have a past where you're remembering things that are horrible, if you're remembering things that happened when you're 2 years old, you're probably just imagining that stuff. If somebody's helped you imagine that stuff. But if you're remembering things that are, at an age when you could remember things, and then you actually did go through those things, they were really solid, and other people have even verified them. So you went through a whole bunch of horrible stuff. And some of those people may still be around, in which case, if they did horrible things to you, you don't want to have anything to do with them anymore. If they're no longer around, well, you aren't going to have anything to do with them anymore. But one of the things this woman asked was, in a sense, was what can I do about what happened before? Now the person's passed away. Well, even if the person is still here, unless you have evidence of a crime, you can't go to the police and say, this person was mean to me when I was 3. They did this thing to me when I was 3. And the police will go, do you have any proof? If you say, no, I remember it. Well, generally speaking, unless you're going against the rich and famous, you probably can't. The police are just kind of say, if you don't have evidence, we can't do anything, which is reasonable. They can't investigate something without evidence. So unless you have evidence in the form of photos, evidence in the form of audio, text, something where this person who is still alive is actually, you've actually got proof against them, then go to the police. If it's somebody who is no longer here and there's proof that they did certain things, yes, you can go to the police and say, look, this person is dead, but this is the things that they did. Maybe something can come of it. But they can't do anything about the person who's dead, so they can't arrest them. So then the question is what? For most people, they're not going to have evidence to go to law enforcement. So they're going to have to accept that that's not something they can do. They're going to have to live with what happened or what they think happened. Okay, so the next thing I wrote was this. What you're left with is ruminating about how things were not right at home. Your suspicions that there was some sick stuff going on. You could be totally right, or you could have false memories. And you're focusing on them. And you were adding maybe more to them than there were. But I don't know that, but that's the problem is if you ruminate on things, oftentimes things can get bigger and bigger in one's mind. In spite of what you remember, or recreating, it doesn't matter. That time of your life is over. You may have a lot, the person who did this to you is dead, but that part of your life is also dead, except in your own mind and what you think it's done to you. But that part of your life is dead. It's finished. You can look at photographs, you can look back on it, you can go to your therapist and talk about it all you want. And I'm not saying it's all of discussion is wrong with the therapist. I'm not saying that, but it is dead. You cannot change what happened, except that you accept that it was terrible. Then I wrote this. Let's say you were in Cambodia at the time of the horrible war. All manner of terrible things happened. Let's say you were a Jew in Germany at the time of the Nazis. Like I have relatives, ancestors now, who were killed in concentration camps. And one of my relatives, who is no longer with us, I used to see she had the numbers on her arm. And she had been experimented surgically while she was in the concentration camp and was not thereafter never able to have children. What could she do about that? When she was free from the camps, what could she do about it? She could write a book, she could talk about it, but she can't change it. She can't change what happened to her in the camps. She can't change the fact that physically she was altered so she can't have kids. What did she do about it? You know what she did? She came to the US, she got married. She had a good life. She had a dog. They said she had a little dog that she adored, traveled a lot. And I don't know too much about other stuff that she did, but perhaps she did a lot of charitable stuff. Maybe she, contributed to different things that she thought would help the future. And that is the important point. So this is what I said here. So it isn't that she forgot what happened. And it isn't that what happened didn't affect her. But she had two choices: to dwell in the past or to embrace the future. And a lot of people say, we got to move on. And a lot of people hate that expression. So I like embrace the future better, because sometimes it is hard to move on. But if you can embrace the future, that this past is dead to me, but what can I do now? Now that I'm here now, I'm still here. Amazing enough, I'm still here. And I said this, and this is where you are. You cannot right those wrongs, but you cannot dwell in the past, and you can embrace the future. That's what you can do. You can live a good life, do good things, help people, help animals, help the cause, whatever cause it is you want to help people understand history. That's fine too. When you can do that, you will be able to be good to yourself and others. So you can either be bad to yourself by constantly dwelling on this stuff and not doing anything. And then everybody around you, you're not really helpful to them either, because they're like, oh, here she goes again. What's her issue? That kind of thing. If you can be good to yourself, you can be good to others. And then you can really embrace the future. Living in the past does nothing for anyone. That is true. Understanding the past is a different issue. If you can right a wrong, that you can really right a wrong, that's fine. If you cannot do those things, embrace the future and take all of who you are and give it to yourself, give it to your friends, give it to your family, give it to the community, help children, help whatever, be a teacher, whatever. But don't dwell on the past, because the past is dead. And if you dwell there, you're pretty much dead too. Those are my thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts below. And again, if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. See you next time.